so we got most of everybody here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem. So I was kind of looking at what to do today and how to kind of make the schedule work. And especially looking at lesson 4.4. The conclusion I came to is that I'm just not going to do I'm not going to do a lecture on lesson 4.4 because I don't think it fits in real well. The other thing that I've decided is to push the due date for the lesson 4 labs back a day. So they were previously due tomorrow. I'm going to push them back to Wednesday. So those are two changes for sure. What I was also thinking about over the weekend was that there were a few things that I kind of had hoped to get to on Friday, but we really didn't get to. And also thinking about some things like, oh, well, we didn't really cover that, so that probably should be covered. So what I'm thinking kind of for today is to kind of continue on with what we did with 4.5 and to just kind of flesh the Droid Cafe project out a little bit more because I think that will we talked about how to actually use the recycler view, but the thing we didn't talk about is how that fits into kind of the larger picture of your application and new things that introduces. So for instance, one of the things we didn't get to is, okay, so we got the recycler view working to show the products, but you can't click on a product and add it to your cart anymore. That's broken, right? And so, that's one of the things we want to talk about how to fix. So does that kind of, what?
And how long do you think that's going to take? An hour or two?
We'll see. I really don't know. This is the other reason I've just pushed the labs back a day, because I don't really know. Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds good.
I think that what we do today will factor directly into what you're doing with your labs, is kind of my thought. I think that what we do today will shed a lot of light onto a variety of issues that you may already be having or will run into shortly. So that's kind of where that goes. So no, I don't know how long it will take, and we'll just kind of see it. We'll play it by ear. I know that I want to get you guys back to lab time, so I do want to try and keep it short, but also kind of looking at what we need to talk about. I don't know how feasible that is, so that's kind of my bind. And the other reason that it's like, well, that if we're going to talk about this stuff, then there's not room to talk about lesson 4.4. I will say that the stuff I want to kind of look at today is kind of adjacent and related to the stuff in lesson 4.4. So, as you go through the reading material for 4.4, you'll kind of see, where some of this stuff connects. But part of the deal is, so lesson 4.4 talks about a variety of ways to kind of do navigation. It's mainly focused on that. A lot of that is refresh in terms of the up navigation versus the back or temporal navigation, and talking about some of the theory behind there. Two controls that 4.4 introduces are the basically how to do tabs in Android, and as well as something called the drawer, the app drawer. My general feeling with that is I know that your final projects are probably not going to have tabs, and they're probably not going to have a navigation drawer. So, and neither of those I really plan to have on a hands-on test. So I don't know that those are really worth the time to necessarily spend a lecture on, given all that. Okay?
Yeah, I think you said they're pretty easy too. We could probably figure it out on our own if we wanted to go that way, right? Unlike the recycler view.
I will say that the navigation drawer takes a little bit of work. There are a few new concepts, but in the end, it doesn't provide a lot of functionality over the menu. if that makes sense. It's really just a big menu. It all is all it is that works differently. The tabs is a little bit complicated, I would say, because there's a few things you need to get it to work. There's a tab layout control, there's a view pager control, and there's also, you have to get into fragments to make it work. And so, one of the questions that had been asked in terms of the dialogues reading is like, well, what are these fragments? And we haven't really talked about them. And I would say that, so fragments is one of those things that you need in order to do tabs. And that's part of where it becomes a little bit difficult. I will say that fragments have become a lot more important than they used to be. I'd say when this book was written, they were not as important as they are today, and they weren't as widely supported as they are today. Fragments, to kind of give a brief explanation, they're basically mini activities, sort of. The problem is they're not context aware and other things. The idea is to have reusable parts of your UI that you can put in different places, or you can kind of scale it to different form factors, say tablet versus phone. But working with fragments is kind of the hard part in there. And so I don't personally think that right now is probably the best time to be talking about fragments.
Okay, from the reading, it seems like it's almost inextricable from what we're doing with, I think it was with, was it Recycler View? I just remember seeing it a lot. No, Dialogues. Yeah. It was with Dialogues. Yeah.
It's really, as we did with the Dialogues, you notice that I did all of those without using a fragment. The time picture and the date picker, I didn't use a fragment, because the reasoning that they give for why you should do that, from my experience in testing, doesn't pan out. So my experience in testing is that creating a fragment the way they told you to actually causes more problems than it helps. The big claim that they had of you should do a fragment so the back navigation works, but the back navigation works without a fragment, at least in current versions of Android. So I don't think that really holds a lot of water. But anyway, so to answer your question, could you learn it on yourself? With what you know, it would take a little bit of time, because there are a lot of things in there in terms of working with tabs that you're maybe not aware of. But my experience with students from last semester going over the tabs is that this was the wrong time for us to cover it. Was my experience last year, and that in the end students didn't have a great grasp of it anyway. Okay.
All right.
So what I think I want to talk about instead is the part that's more important, and I think the part that will help you more now is just to think about how you navigate around the app and how do we get data from one application to another. So we this is a lot of this is going to be a review, because we've talked about how to go from one activity to another. But at this point it gets a little bit interesting because we're dealing with some things that maybe we really haven't covered in a lecture. Namely having lists and maybe needing to store data in a place that's maybe accessible to more than one activity. Talking about how to pass objects and lists around and things like that. So we do need to kind of talk about the ups and downs and some different tools that are available there for kind of navigating your app and getting the data around, because getting the data from one screen to another or sharing that data is, I'd say, a lot more is usually where students have the problem, is getting the data around, not so much with the UI of it.
I got a quick question. Moving the data around, that's
Yep.
intense though, isn't it? Isn't that how we do that, or is there something more?
It's more. There's more options. So we've talked about how, we've talked about how to use intents to pass some data around. We've talked about how to use, start activity for result to kind of, start an activity and then get data back as the result, again, using an intent. We've talked about how to do the on save instance state, on restore instance state. But that, especially when we've dealt with intents and bundles, one of the things that I've kept it down pretty simple in the sense that we're always saving basically integers, bools, and strings, and we're never saving objects. And so sometimes you get to the point where you really do need to pass around objects. I would say more often than not, you want to avoid putting entire objects in intents, but it does come up sometimes where you need to do it. Okay?
Okay.
So, thinking about where we are at today with the Droid Cafe project, we've got really only two screens. We've got the main activity and we've got the order activity, right? And so for main activity, you can click on the cart button, whether it be the FAB or in the menu. You can go here, which actually is kind of an anti-pattern because you really should only have one way to get there. It should either be the FAB or the menu. But we don't have kind of a way in between here, like where does the shopping cart fit in, right? Or where do I see the details of a product if it can't fit in that list, right? So where might I put those screens in to say, where does that fit in, for instance, to see the details of a product? Any thoughts?
It would have to be a lateral activity at the same level, I suppose.
Okay.
Or it's like cascaded down, but not at the same. It's tough to put to words, but it's not the same as order activity, but it would be a level down from there.
Okay, so let me move these around a little bit, because if you're going to talk about lateral, this is really not a lateral move. This is more a descendant move, is what we've got here. So realistically, the only way to get to order activity is through main activity. So really, it's more like that.
Yeah, I guess I think that like almost like a dead end street from main activity or wherever the product is to see it. The only way to get to the order activity would be to go back to the main activity.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so this is where it is right now. So you're thinking about adding it somewhere in here?
Well, I don't know if I'd put the direction downward, but it would come off of the main activity, and I could read maybe an extended description of the product. And the only way to get to the order activity would be to hit the back arrow, go back to main activity, and then the order activity. It would necessarily have to be 2 steps.
Okay. You're saying a number of things, and we want to kind of break that down, and you want to think about those steps by step, right? So kind of thinking about one connection at a time, right? So if I add in a product detail, right, is that product detail the same level at the main activity, or is it a level below? Anybody can answer this. Is it lateral? Is it the same level as main activity, or is it a descendant?
I think you can make it either.
I would argue it's only one or the other. It's only one or the other. So which is it?
Wouldn't it be a descendant of main activity?
Okay. Why would it be a descendant?
Shouldn't like everything be a descendant of the main activity?
Not necessarily. But usually yes.
It's also not mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm. So let's say I start the app, right? Which of these 3 screens can I start the application in? Is it possible for me to launch the app and go straight into order activity?
No.
No. Would it make sense for me to launch the app and immediately be viewing the Froyo?
No.
So it's not possible to get to either of these two screens unless I'm going through some other screen first, right? And so that's where you've got to think about the relationships among those. So main activity is really, it's the one where we start. And so typically we're going to write our apps in a way that there's only one entry point, right? When you start the application, that first screen you see is main activity. And so that might have a login screen on it. It might have a list of products. It might have a list of stores, whatever it may have there, but main activity is your first entry point. So that's one thing. So the way I would draw the arrow is I would draw it this way. And I would say that the, product detail activity is a child of main activity. Say you can get there from main activity, but there's no way to get there directly. Right? So if you're on this activity, you have to have come from there, which means there should be a little up navigation up on here. Cool? Now, things I might want to do from product detail activity, once I'm looking at an activity, I might actually want to purchase it, right? And so maybe if I purchase it, that might take me here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if I've got that workflow, one of the things to realize, how many different ways are there now to get to order activity? Two. Okay. That's pretty common. If I'm thinking about the up navigation, though, where should the up navigation go?
Only one place.
Yeah,
Main
the up
activity.
navigation can only go one place. So typically the way that they would advise you to do it is say main activity, if you click the little up arrow, it should go back here, right? And so up arrow would take you back to main activity. If I were to instead press the back button, do temporal navigation, well, that would either take me to main activity or product detail, depending on how I got here, right? So temporal is definitely it could be either way. Does that make sense? But up is defined as only one. Now, as I've mentioned previously, I think I find it more user-friendly to keep the up navigation and the back navigation the same. Which means that if I got to order activity from here, I'd really like to be able to press the up button and go back there. Or if I got there directly from main activity, I actually like to have the up button go there. So I actually would prefer to have it override and behave the same way. For the reasons we talked about previously, but just as terms of, I think from a user standpoint, it makes more sense than defining a single, here is the single parent. Okay.
Mr. Smith, they call the temporal navigation, is that sometimes called breadcrumbs because you go back the way that you came?
Actually, breadcrumbs are typically constrained to the typical way to build breadcrumbs is breadcrumbs are typically just ancestor navigation. That's the official kind of standardized way of doing breadcrumbs is just ancestors. So if I was looking at a breadcrumb and say I'm down here, I would just see main activity. I wouldn't say product detail in there. Does that make sense? Breadcrumb just tells you the hierarchy.
Okay.
If you're thinking about web development. So yeah, if I was on the order screen on a website, I would not expect to see this in my breadcrumb. Breadcrumbs are, they're really, really subjective. Every website has decided differently how to implement them. This as I say, the standard recommendation, the standard behavior is for it to be just ancestral navigation. But I have seen some websites and some developers where they've decided to implement it as temporal navigation instead of as ancestral navigation. I have actually seen both. but I would say it's more common to do the ancestral navigation method. So there's that. Okay, other things we want to think about, right? On the order activity right now, right? What all is on the order activity? Or what was on the order activity?
No, I remember a text that says what items you have in your cart.
Okay. What else?
The information form.
Okay, the information form, or we'd call that the order form, right? I would argue that there's maybe a little bit too much there, right? So if we look at the actual screen, let me say we go here, right? Up here previously we had the list of items in your cart showing up. We also had all of this place to fill in your information, right? But typically we don't have, this is not, filling out your information is not usually on the shopping cart page, right? That's usually the next screen over. Does that make sense? Like you usually go to your shopping cart and then you go, from there you go to the order page. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I see here is I feel like there's actually too much on this one screen, and it kind of needs to be broken up. So the way I would architect this is, if I was going to actually spread this out, would be this way. So we start with the main activity. From main activity, you can go into the product detail activity. From the product detail activity, you can go to the cart activity. And then from that cart, you can go to the order, right? So the cart would be showing you what's in your shopping cart. The order is where you fill out your shipping information and things like that. Does that make sense? So my goal for the day is to kind of try and re-architect the application to put these two screens in the middle. Does that follow?
Yeah, I get it. I wouldn't necessarily come up with that on my own, but looking at it, I understand it.
Yeah. So that's what we want to do. So, things that means. So you can go to the product detail, look at detail, decide you're not interested. You can go back. You could say, okay, when I get to the detail, I can add something in my cart that takes me over here. I can go back from my cart and maybe go back to main activity, or from my main activity, I could go look at my cart. And then for my cart, I can finally do, the only way to get to actually ordering is from the cart. So that's the kind of navigation scheme that we're trying to set up.
Are there other common navigation schemes that are available online where it's like a shopping cart? It's going to function pretty much the same, mostly the same, regardless of if it's Droid Cafe or Amazon or whatever. Of course, it'd be more complicated, but other architectures, is that out there, and you just go to it and use it?
I would say, when we're talking specifically down to the shopping cart, there's a lot of user expectation built into a shopping cart, which means that, if you're building a shopper cart, you should build it the way the user expects it to behave. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so users have I would say, a much more narrow perspective on things like the shopping cart, because it's kind of a universal kind of understanding of what that means. So what I would say is in terms of that, there may be some other. The only thing that would change, the only thing that I would see different, this sort of makes sense if we are having a cart where you can buy multiple things at once. Basically any app where you can buy multiple things at once, I would expect this sort of flow. Everybody with me there? Now, what happens if I have a website or have an app, really, where I can only buy one thing, right? Where every order I make only has one thing in it. How would that change things if my orders can only have one item in them?
You really don't need a cart.
Yeah, you don't need a cart.
Really wouldn't need a cart. So I would actually bypass this and just take you directly from the details to the order. Does that make sense? So that exists as well. And think about what are some things where that might be the case. Where are some examples where you might not actually want a shopping cart? Because there's actually a few.
Maybe something like old school eBay when they only did auctions.
Okay. That's true. Yep. And in fact, I don't think the eBay still has realistically, I don't think eBay has a shopping cart even for the buy now things. Because either buy now or place a bid, right? I don't think on eBay you're ever really working with multiple things.
When you buy stocks and you put in for things like that, buys, is that considered a shopping cart?
Actually, usually most websites, in fact, like I do my stuff through Fidelity. When I buy stocks, I have to do them one by one. I can't buy. It's actually pretty unusual to buy, say, 5 stocks at once. You're usually like figure out how to do one stock, go make the order, and then go do the next one. So if you're working with stocks, this is really unusual. It would be really unusual to have a shopping cart for stocks. Is there value to that? Yes, but that's not how most investment companies are set up. What else? Well, what might be another reason for not having a shopping cart?
Maybe you're doing like a donation, like charity donations wouldn't have a shopping cart.
That makes sense too, right? So charity donations. I would say additionally just high valued items. If I say I'm buying a car, it's very unlikely that your users will want to buy 3 cars at once. Does that make sense?
Okay, so like houses.
Yeah, or houses. If you're gonna have a thing where you're gonna buy cars, it doesn't make sense to have a shopping cart. It just says I would just skip this thing and say, okay, you want to buy? Here we go. And if you want to buy 3 cars at once, well, then you just need to call us or come into the store and we'll handle it directly. Because at that point, it's like, we would rather give you a personal touch rather than going through an app. Or that kind of thing. Same thing with houses. Yeah.
So this is just basically grouped up into things like if you're buying cars, it's things that need a signature like titles and mortgages and such.
If I would say if it's a large value item or it's the other thing that happens if you have a shopping cart is that a lot of people will add a lot of stuff to their shopping cart and then never purchase. And if you take this out of the picture, that basically prevents them from getting stuck where they've said, I want this thing, but never actually go buy it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So for a few of your apps, and I've talked with a few students, like, well, it's like, well, for the thing you're building, the shopping cart screen doesn't make sense. And so, you really have to think about in terms of navigation, it's really is situational in terms of what are you building, okay? So this is, I'd say, the most common sort of thing, and works good for low-valued items or such that you might buy, say, 5 different items at once, then great. But if it's more high-valued or unique items, then I would use a different scheme. So. Another place this comes up commonly is subscriptions. If you're going to say buy a subscription for a service, let's say you're signing up for Disney Plus, you're just going to be signing up for Disney Plus. So it doesn't make sense to add Disney Plus to a shopping cart and then order it. You're just going to say, hey, I want to buy Disney Plus, or I want to subscribe to Disney Plus. So, if you have any questions about how to navigate around your diagram, around your app that you're building, I'd strongly recommend to get in touch with me, on one of the lab days, and we can kind of, try to hash this out and figure out what makes the most sense for the thing you're building. Because it's hard to generalize, is what I will say. Does that make sense? It's hard to put hard and fast rules about it should always be this way or that way. Okay.
Yep.
So that's what we're going to do. So if you haven't yet, we're going to pull up Android Studio, and you're going to pull up the Droid Cafe project. We're going to kind of pick up where we left off. This is still going to go into 4.5. We're not going to move the project or anything like that. We're just going to continue on with this in the 4.5 folder. So please thumbs up the message in the Discord when you've got this pulled up and when you're ready to go. So if we think about, kind of the direction we're going, you'll see that there's two additional activities that we're going to be adding, namely the product detail activity, as well as the card activity. So what I would probably do first is maybe add those activities. So let's say under Droid Cafe, I'm going to right click and we're going to say new activity. So I'm going to say new activity, empty activity. And so this first one is going to be the product detail activity. Now, naming convention wise, remember to end these in the word activity. Don't call this product detail. You want to call it product detail activity. The reason for that is that oftentimes you have model classes that may have a very similar name. So you might have the product class and the product activity class. And so it helps to kind of be able to tell, okay, these ones that end in activity, they are screens in our app, versus ones that don't end activity, then those are typically going to be model classes. So having that suffix really helps us tell what kind of thing to expect there. So that's where yep.
Sorry, model classes?
Model classes. So for instance, our product class is a model class. It's where the data is stored.
Model means data storage.
Data storage. So product and product data storage are both considered part of the model.
Product data source is a model too, you said?
Yeah, is a model as well. So both of those things would fit into the model. And so this I'm going to call product detail activity. And I started that with empty activity. All right, and then I'm also going to go create the card activity. So new activity, empty activity, and we're going to call this cart activity. And so having done that, you should have two new layouts, activity cart, product, and activity product detail, as well as two new activity classes called cart activity and product detail activity. Anybody still working through that?
Yeah, mine's still loading.
Okay.
Alright, I'm good.
Okay. So that's been set up, and we're starting to get quite a few classes here, right? In this package, you can see that already. Okay. So I might want to be able to organize those maybe a little bit better. Does that make sense? So if I think about how I've kind of got these things, the things that are in there, I talked about, that there's this idea of the model, right? We also, in that scheme, we talked about the idea of kind of model view controller is where that idea comes up. So model being where your data is stored, controller kind of being glue code between the front end and the back end. A lot of times your business logic will be there in the middle, and then your view is the stuff that's directly in front. That's the stuff that the user sees. So one of the ways that I could maybe organize this potentially is into different folders based on which layer it's in. Is it in the Is it in the model layer? Is it in the controller layer, or is it in the view layer? So that'd be one way I could organize this. I'm going to start by just saying, well, let's make a folder for the model. So I'm going to right click on this Droid Cafe package again. I'm going to say new. But rather than saying a new class, I'm going to say let's create a new package. And you'll notice that there's a few different things here that look very similar. You've got Android resource directory, sample directory, package, etc. I want to create specifically a package. So package is kind of like a special kind of folder that contains classes. So I'm going to say new package. I got this little pop-up that shows up, and I'm just going to end it with model. So keep all the stuff that's before, and then inside of that we're going to nest the term model. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take those classes that we have that we said are part of our model, namely the product and the product data source, and move it into that model. So I'm starting to give it some more organization.
Did you click refactor?
I did click refactor, yes. So, because what it had to do, for instance, main activity, which was referring to a product, it had to go update the imports in main activity to point them at the new place where the product and product data source is. Basically, anytime you have classes that are not in the same package, then you have to import them. And previously, they were all in the same package. Any questions so far?
No, looks good.
Okay. So let's think about, the classes that we have left. What would be another good folder to maybe create that would hold a good number of those classes?
Did you say view?
View could be one of them. What else? Give me some other suggestions. Just think about we've got 6 classes here.
Well, the first 4 are all screens, so I don't know if we call them screens, and then the last 2 they're only there because we have recycler view.
Yeah, so that's a good thing to notice, right? Is those 4 screens, or namely their activities, actually. So I would just make another folder in here. So new package. This is going to be the activity package. I've got my model package and my activity package, and I'm going to move those 4 activities into the activity folder and hit refactor. If it will go. Something didn't update.
I had the same problem.
Now why do I have to do these one by one?
Yeah, mine glitched out and left them all there, but put them all in activity at the same time.
Yeah, same here.
Weird. Okay. It seems like it's working I'm going to go ahead and close the project and reopen it, because something here is not what it should be. Okay, so closing it, reopening them, they're all in the activity folder.
Has Android Studio always been kind of buggy like this, or has it just been getting that way and it's grown more complex?
I don't know. I'd say I would say what I will say is, for better for worse, every IDE that's been based on Java, I've had some degree of difficulty with. And so I don't know where this comes in. I think that yes, there's probably some. I don't know if I can't categorize Android Studio as more buggy or less buggy than it used to be. But I will say that between Eclipse and anything based on IntelliJ and NetBeans, all of which are based on Java, I've had some issues. So I don't know what the root cause of this is, but I think that, yeah, I would probably blame Java as being a hard language to work with. Is maybe the core. Either way, closing it, reopening it, fixed it, and you're right. Both of these, product list adapter is a subclass of recycler view adapter. Product view holder is a subclass of recycler view holder. So we could potentially name that recycler view. The other way that I would name that, and the name I'm actually going to use is adapter. I'm going to say this is a adapter. Because I find that oftentimes I have other kinds of adapters, and they're close enough together that I think it makes sense to put those together. So that's how I would group it together. Is I've got my activities, I've got my adapters, and I've got my model. Does that make sense in terms of organization?
Yeah, that really helps, because it is getting crowded, and they're not in a logical order on their own, other than being alphabetical.
Yeah, because you start to get, they get alphabetical, and alphabetical stops making sense pretty quickly here. So that's how I would organize things into packages. So again, activity, adapter, and model classes. Okay. So if I think about our place where we're going, if we're going to these 4 screens, are there any additional model classes that we need?
Yeah, we need one for card activity.
Okay, we need one for card activity. Why is that?
It is a temporary holding place for any items before they're bought.
Okay. So what would you call that model class that we're going to use for the cart?
Cart?
Okay. Well, if I say cart, that means the entire cart, right?
Well, I'm just going off of what we have there now, product
Right.
and product data source. So
Right. So a cart would be the entire shopping cart. What might be inside of that shopping cart?
products.
Products. Okay. Next question. Let's say I go with that. Let's say I want to add 3 froyo to my 3 froyo to my shopping cart. How does that work? Anybody here?
Well, I mean, in the original app, you just clicked it 3 times.
Okay. In my shopping cart, do I want to see the froyo 3 times?
No, you want to see froyo like ×3 or something like that, like an X3.
Probably, right? So
Or
if
maybe
I
a
just say
quantity.
cart contains products, I've got no way to keep track of the quantity. Does that make sense? So I really need an additional class in there, and I would call that cart item, right? So into the model class, you might say, well, let's add a cart, which is a class, and maybe we also add a cart item, which is also a class. Okay. So we got cart and cart item. What fields does the cart item need to have in it?
Oh, I think we just have a name, yeah? That's about the only thing. And there's the description too, I suppose.
Okay.
Oh, we
Jeez.
put prices too on them.
So you say name and description. What about somebody else? What do you think we need in the cart item class?
Is that where we put quantity?
Is what?
Is that where we put quantity?
That would be the quantity. So yeah, I mean for sure we want a quantity there.
I think you'd want to use the ID of the item
Okay.
product.
Might need to use the ID of the item. Okay. And so one suggestion, if we're thinking of this in sort of a relational database side, if I was modeling this as a relational database, that might be all I need, right? The ID of the product and how many of them. Because in theory, I could look up all the other information. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's one possible way to do it. This is one possible way to rate the cart item as just that. Okay. And then I have to kind of think about, well, where am I going to get the item by ID? Okay. Well, that's one thing there. I think the thing that you should do here is, if we think about what we know so far, right? There were a few suggestions there about, well, we need this information. Well, we need this information. Well, might need that information. What are we missing? Well, we never did a screen mock-up for the cart screen. So we don't actually know what data we're going to be showing. Is everybody following with me there?
Yeah.
So because I don't know what data I'm actually going to be showing, there's things like, well, I don't think we need this. I don't think we need that. But we haven't agreed on what we're going to be showing there, right? So it could be, given that we haven't designed and determined what's going to go on that screen, it could be anything from just this all the way up to everything in product plus quantity, right? Whether or not you show the image, right, that is actually a decision to be made, right? It might be that you want to show the product's image on the shopping cart. It might be that you don't care. You know, that's a decision that you can make. You might want the description. You might not want the description. Is everybody with me there?
Yeah, I'm not getting why you would want a separate cart item, which is, is it just that a product becomes a cart item? Other than that, they're the same?
It's because they're actually different things. Like, an item in your cart is not a product. They're not really the same thing. So if I'm talking about something that's in your cart, well, that quantity idea, right, is not something that we should hijack the product to add a quantity. Does that make sense? Because they're really separate things.
Yeah, it's just due to its location. Things in the products don't have a quantity in itself, but
Right.
when they're added to the cart, they do. But other than that, they have all the other characteristics.
And even if products did have a quantity, that quantity would represent the number that are in stock, not the number that are in your cart.
Yeah, it's a different sense, right?
It's a different sense. So, it really is. It always, if you're going to build a shopping cart, you're going to need to create some sort of cart item class. There's no way around that. If you need a shopping cart, you need a way to represent the data that's in that cart. And that's never going to be the same as the product. Okay. So let's think about what we want to do with this screen. So I'm going to say, let's make a new wireframe. And I'm going to go find my phone, which I feel like there we go, iPhone. So, boop, 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 boop.
Can we do this too? Or we're just watching?
You can just watch. We're just brainstorming. So if we think about that, and if I drop that in, it generally becomes way too big because it's very much too tall. So usually what I do is I change the dimensions to roughly 400 by 600. That's kind of close to the range of where we want it to be. The other things you can change over here are sometimes I usually want to turn this on, the top and bottom, and so that restricts me from kind of putting anything down here or putting anything up there, where it's usually reserved. Cool. All right, so let's think about what we want to put in here. So in terms of the shopping cart, what needs to be on the shopping cart? What needs to be in here? Probably need a recycler view. Does that make sense? Probably a recycler view to show the things that are in your cart. Is everybody with me there?
Yes. And a total.
Okay. So I'm going to need a place for some items. Can reserve some space there. And a total. Okay, so the total I might want to put somewhere down here. Bottom of the screen. So I have some place to show the total. What else?
Probably want a button too to proceed to the order screen.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And that would make sense as an FAB. Or I could put that button down here in the bottom area where I'm showing the total. That would be another option. So I could say down here, place order. If I'm ordering things online, do I usually have to pay tax, or might I have to pay tax?
In the good old days, you didn't have to.
Yeah. For a period of time there, no, but typically there's going to be tax in there, right? So that means I need to make space for those things, maybe over here in the corner. So we've got our subtotal, our total, and our tax. And so total's typically going to be on the bottom. You're going to have subtotal, tax, and subtotal, and total. Usually in there somewhere you'll have a delivery charge too, right? So that's another thing to think about. I'm going to leave that out for this specific example. Okay. So for each item that's in our cart, what information should we show? Well, I probably want to give the user the image of the item. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in here, maybe on the left side. I probably want to show what the name of the item is. So we might say Froyo. Now the question is, if I've got 3 Froyos in there, should I put that number before or after the item's name? Or should I put it somewhere else entirely?
I would put it before in a drop-down box if you want to change the quantity.
Okay. So we could put that over here. Drop down. Combo box. And so 3. Might look something like that.
Yes.
Do I need anything else in there?
Price.
Okay, price would probably be a good thing. And so, what was the price of our Froyo?
I think it was $9.
Was it $9? Okay, so if you got 3 Froyo, that would make that $28.
Or 27.
Or 27. Yeah, 27. So over here, I might say $27. Right. And so you have to keep straight, are we showing, if I'm doing this, that's not the price of a single item, that's the price of 3 of those. I think that's pretty good, right?
If this is a view of all the products we have in the order, why would it be a drop down?
What do you mean a drop down?
The quantity on the left side of the Froyo.
Okay.
Unless this is the page where we're setting the quantity.
What if you want to edit the quantity? What if you want to say, well, I want to change this to, maybe I want to use the drop down and go with, have the ability to change the number that's there, right? So maybe I can click the drop down and it will give me options for the quantity. That's pretty normal, right? Go to your shopping cart, you can edit the quantity. Is also possible I want to maybe remove things from the cart.
Yeah, delete button.
Okay. Where do I put my delete button?
Well, we don't have a lot of space. You could just put a 0 under quantity. I've seen that. Amazon does that.
Yep, so that's one option. Let's say I do want to have a delete button, though. Where can I put that? Anybody here?
Probably in the bottom right corner of
Okay.
the item.
So bottom right corner. Maybe I'll just use an icon. And maybe group that together. Why am I not seeing the group button? Oh, well, I'm just going to copy it. Control C, Control V, down here. And maybe this, I'm just going to get rid of the options so it's not expanded. And duplicate that again. And so this one, I want to say, let's bring that to the front. And here, this is maybe donut. And what was the other one? Donut and donut froyo and the ice cream sandwich. Right? So now we have an idea of what we're going for. Does that make sense? Oftentimes you have to step back and think about what your problem is and how you're going to design it before you know what data you need. Is everybody with me there?
Yeah.
So if I've got this now in front of me, what fields does my cart item need to have? So I'm going to say, yes, I probably want the ID. And in this case, this is going to be the product ID. But what else do I need to fill in to be able to show the data here?
We need something for the total, the tax, the extended price.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me ask you about this. So the total and tax, where does that appear on the screen? Appears down here, right? Cart item represents a single item in the cart, right? So tax and total do not belong on that class. Does that follow? Because otherwise every item would have tax.
All right, just extended price then, because that does show up on the items.
Okay. So that's one option.
Yeah, we need to pull in price and then do the math with quantity and.
I would not do the math here. I would just say private float price. And we'll do the math in the UI, not on the data. Okay, what else? Do I have everything that shows up on the screen? Everything that shows up for a cart item?
Need the product name.
Okay, I need the product name. And maybe I'm going to call this product price. What else?
The picture.
Picture. Okay. And so I might say private int product image res ID. Or in this case, this might be a thumbnail. Because it's probably not going to be the full size image. Okay, so I've got all those things kind of accounted for. And so I need to kind of flesh this class out. So I'm just going to add a constructor. And you can write that out. What I'm going to do here today is just go down to right-click and go down to Generate. And I'm going to generate a constructor for myself. That's going to include all of that. That was not what I wanted. Delete that and regenerate. Constructor, I want to select everything. So I'm going to hold Shift and select all of that. Hit OK. So that's going to create me a constructor that takes all of the arguments. Now, one issue I have here, if I'm using this constructor, this kind of requires a lot of code potentially. So I might want to create another constructor that's maybe easier to work with that just takes a product. So here I'm going to say, let's take a product and a quantity. So we've got a product and a quantity, and then I'm just going to pull all the individual fields off of that.
And can you tell me how you auto-generated that?
So I just right-clicked and hit Generate. So right-click, Generate, Constructor, and you should have a pop-up like this. Where you can select everything. Did you follow that?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. So I'm going to create this second constructor. And so this one is probably going to be the one I'm actually going to use, where I just take a product and a quantity, and it just pulls off the individual fields off of that product. Next thing, I'm going to right click and I'm just going to say refactor. And we're going to say, or sorry, not refactor, go to generate again. And we're going to create our getters and setters. And I just want a getter and setter for all of the fields. So that's going to give me all of these getters and setters.
For the line 24 there, do that again. Sorry, I was having some Android Studio problems.
That I wrote by myself.
Okay.
That there is no way to generate. That I had to write out. So it was able to generate this constructor, but there's no way for it to generate this one. Everybody following so far?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Anybody still typing?
I am.
Okay. Give you a few.
But you can go ahead. This isn't hard stuff here.
Yeah. I put the actual this part you can generate. The part that you couldn't generate, I just put in Discord. So I'm going to go into the next thing. So going back to the cart, kind of thinking about what I need in the cart. I know I want a list of items. So this would be array list cart item. This is my items. I also I notice I need that, but then I also need the individual values for down here. So I might say private float subtotal private float tax amount. I'm also going to put in there private float tax %. So I have both of those numbers. You know, the tax is a percentage or the tax is a number. So private float total. Okay. So I've got that. Now for my constructors and my getters and setters here, it's not, I can't generate stuff as easily because of how I want to set it up. So for instance, for the cart, first thing I want to do is I want to initialize the items. And so the items is going to be new array list. And I'm just going to start that with an empty list of items. Okay. With the other amounts, I'm going to leave those as they're going to initialize as 0. So next question. What about having my getters and setters? Well, for the items, it's pretty simple. So I might say public array list get items and return items. I might have in here also a way to add an item or remove an item. So public void add item. And so I could maybe add a cart item there. So I could say either add an item to the cart, or we could do it the other way around and say, well, we'll add a product and a quantity and we'll construct the item. But I'm going to just say let's take an item. Okay, so with that item that's been given, we'll just say items dot add. So add an item to it. If we want to remove an item, also need a method for that. And here I might say, well, the way I want to remove it is based on the product ID. So that's all I need is given the product ID, let's go remove any products that have that ID. Come back to that. Does that make sense so far with in terms of being able to manipulate the items?
Yeah, so like a flashback to the what we did in Node with the deleting made me think about that.
Yeah. Now, what if I want to change the quantity? What if I want to change the quantity of an item? Do I need to have an update?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the signature of that? It's probably going to be void. What arguments do I need in order to update the item?
An integer.
What's the integer represent?
The new quantity.
Okay, the new quantity. Is that enough information? Is that
We
all I
also
need?
need a string for the product ID.
Okay, so we need the product ID. So I might need product ID and int quantity. So I can take the product ID and the quantity and figure that out. Okay, that's good. So I'll need to then do some math in there and whatnot. Okay, now thinking about the subtotal, right? Do I need a getter for the subtotal?
Yes.
Why?
So you can display it.
Okay, that's an easy answer. And so what does that mean for all of these values? I probably need getters so I can display them. So I'm going to go ahead and add getters for each of those. So private float get subtotal. And so that's just going to return the subtotal. Same thing with the other three numbers. So get tax amount is what I want there.
No,
Get tax
32
percent.
is a private.
Oh, yes, that should be public. Thank you. And then the next one would be get total. So I'm just going to add getters for each of those things. Here's a question. Should there be a setter for the subtotal?
No,
Why not?
because you just need to add up the items. You shouldn't really need to set it.
Okay. Shouldn't need to set it. Because these manipulators right here should update the subtotal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you don't want the user to directly update the subtotal. Okay. And the same thing holds with the total, right? If we change the items that are in the cart, then we want the total to be automatically updated. So there shouldn't be a setter for either the get total or the subtotal. That would cause problems. Same thing for the tax amount. Tax amount's based on the subtotal, so there shouldn't be a way to get that. What about the tax percentage, though? Would it be possible for the user to change the tax percentage?
Well, normally it would be based on the location of where they're at. You put in your address, and then the tax would be calculated off that. But in this example, it'd probably be a final value. Right?
Okay. Well, so what I will say is it would make sense. You know, yes, it may be based on it might be based on your zip code, but that means there needs to be some way to set it. So I'm going to add in here public void set tax percent. And so we'll have the new percent here. So this dot tax percent is equal to percent. Now I'm going to need to come back to this method here in a minute, because I obviously have not updated all the calculations. Okay. So that's kind of our skeleton. Does everybody follow with me? Different ways that you can manipulate the data.
Yeah.
So then the question we need to answer is what needs to happen in each of those cases. So if I think about adding an item, right, what numbers need to be updated? Which of these need to be updated?
Subtotal and tax amount.
Okay. Is that all?
Total as well.
Total as well. Right? So I need to recalculate all of those numbers. Okay? So let's say subtotal. How does the subtotal change? Well, the subtotal would be based on the things I just added. So in here I would say, well, the subtotal we need to add item dot price, get product price times item dot get quantity. So if you add, say, 2 froyo, then I need to increase it by the price of froyo times 2. And the tax amount would be kind of similar to that, right? So I'm going to increase the tax amount, and it would be that, but then multiplied by the percentage. So I'm going to get tax on what I just added.
Mr. Smith, my get product price is showing up in red, and so is my get quantity.
Do you not have those methods in get card item, in the card item class? You'll remember that I generated a bunch of getters and setters here. You want to make sure that you go back and do that.
Make sure
Oh, I
you're
don't
not
have my
typing
getters.
items, and not make sure you type item, not items. That can change it.
Yes, that's important too, because here I'm referring to a single item. The item just added, not the entire list of items.
Yeah, I just forgot to add my getters.
Yeah. So, and then as far as the total is concerned, well, the total is just going to be add those two things together. So total is always subtotal plus tax amount. So I can kind of update it and keep it as a running total. Everybody with me there? Any questions on that math?
No questions on the math, but can you explain in different words again why we don't need setters on some of them? For some reason, that's not jiving with me.
So you remember the term encapsulation?
Yeah, it's so the certain things are kind of kept. The business logic is all in one area, and
the encapsulation, the idea is to hide the implementation. Okay, and so one of the reason I'm not adding setters for, say, tax amount and subtotal and total is because I don't want anybody to have direct access to change those numbers. Because if somebody could just change the subtotal willy-nilly, then we would have data that's out of sync. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So I need to control access to the data through you can do these things and nothing else.
Okay. I'm not really sure how that would be set by the user, but
okay. Well, in terms of user there, I mean more the developer, right? I don't want any developer to just be able to willy-nilly set the subtotal to, say, 0 or 50 or whatever the number is, right? I want that to be controlled based on changes that you make to your cart.
Oh, okay. You think we could take a break in a few?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let's look at... Let's see. Where are we at here? Yeah, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back with these three methods after the break.
Okay, awesome. 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah. Let's call it 15. Come back at 2:15.
Right.
You said 250?
2:15.
Oh, 2:15. Okay.
Oh, and I mistyped it. 2:15. Not 2:25. 2:15. So we'll finish up this cart next. Anybody having difficulties or anything so far we can troubleshoot over the break? Zach, are you all caught up? going to start back up here in a few minutes. How's everybody feeling about this so far? Okay, so let's finish up these methods here. If we think about, updating an item, what's the first task that we need to do, right? What do we need to do in order to update that item? What's step one?
Sorry, what was the question?
So what's the first thing we need to do here with update item? What's kind of our step one to implement this method?
Match the product IDs.
Okay, match the product IDs. We would oftentimes refer to that as searching, or you need to find the appropriate item, right? Because we know the product ID, but we don't know where that is in the list. Does that make sense? We don't know what index that actually represents. So the first thing I need to do is loop through the items. So I'm going to say for cart item. Actually, I'm going to just do a counted loop for int I is equal to 0. I is less than items dot length.
Would it be size or length?
Size. Jumping between different. This is me jumping between different languages, and so I'm doing some other things in both JavaScript and C# at the moment, and so both of those, it's always length. C#, Java's the only one where it's sometimes size, so I forget. So size, and so if I want to do that, then I'm going to say we want to loop through until we find it. So if the current one we're on, so items.getI dot get product ID, if that equals the provided product ID, right, then we found the one we want to update. So assuming I've found it, what do I need to do here?
We want to set the quantity.
Okay, so let's set the quantity. So I can do items.getI dot set quantity, or set quantity, and so we can give it the quantity. Anything else we need to do while we're here?
We would need to. Sorry, I think I cut someone.
Yeah, Daniel.
Recalculate the subtotal
Okay.
tax and total.
Okay. So what do I need? This is true. So what about the subtotal? How am I going to recalculate the subtotal?
Well, you could just go through all the items and add the
Add them back up again.
add the price times quantity, or you could do a differential thing between the previous quantity and the current quantity.
Okay. So I need to know how much the quantity changed by.
Yeah.
So I might want to say, if I want the change in quantity, that would be the new quantity minus the current quantity. And I need to do that before I set it. So I need to say get quantity. Now, one of the things you should start to notice, you see I'm saying items.getI, and I'm saying it a bunch of times. 1, 2, 3. See that? So that there is relatively cheap, but the more times I call it, the more wasteful I'm being. So usually I want to go ahead and save that to a variable so I don't have to get it multiple times. So in here I might say cart item is equal to items get I, and then I can just substitute the word item into those three places, which means I have a lot less code. And I'm having to go look for it in the... I'm basically having to retrieve it from the list only once, rather than retrieving it multiple times. So that's one thing you definitely want to look at refactoring. Okay, so now I've got my change in quantity. Okay, so my subtotal is going to be what? Well, my subtotal goes up based on how much the quantity changed. So if I say... if I'm kind of following that previous formula, it would be the item dot get product price times the change. So if it went up, quantity increased, then that would be a positive change, and if it's a negative change, then that would be a negative amount. So, but either way, it is plus equals. And similarly with the tax amount, would be based on that. And I might want to calculate that. I notice I could say, well, maybe I don't want to, write that calculation twice. item price dot change in price. Maybe I want to do that once. Okay. Well, I might want to. I could build that up here. So maybe we say float change in subtotal is the price of the item times the change in the quantity. Okay, so that's good. And so then down here, we've got change in subtotal, times the tax percent. And then finally, the total just becomes the subtotal plus the tax amount. And then here, finally, we can break out of the loop. We're done.
Why not? Why don't we just have a method inside of this that just calculates all that? You could just call.
The problem is I would be doing a lot of extra work. I'd be doing a lot of recalculation.
Because some of the stuff's not changing, you don't need to do the math on that.
Right. It means doing a lot of extra work if I try to do that. Because like this situation, the way I update the price is different, for instance, than the way I do it here. All of these result in different changes to the price, the numbers, the subtotal, and the etc. Does that follow?
Yeah, I understand.
So I could do that, but it would not generalize. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm saying break because I don't want to go any further in the looking through the items. Next question is, what do I do about the removing?
Wouldn't you just remove it from the array right there?
Remove it from the array?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying like items dot remove?
Yeah, in the product ID.
Okay. That will not give you an error. Unfortunately, it doesn't do what you want. Okay. This will not work. It will not tell you there's a compiler error, but this will not work. Because what is it doing? What is items? Items is a list of card items, right? So it's going to go through there, and it's going to look for, it's comparing a card item to a string. That doesn't work.
You have to find the position first, so you have to do items that, like, what's that one method where you can find the position of where it's at?
So I have to find it first before I can remove it. Does that make sense?
Isn't there an easier way to do it instead of doing a loop? Can't you? Isn't there literally a method?
You need to do a loop.
Oh, okay.
You need to do a loop. Don't try to save yourself effort. You need to do a loop. You will end up hurting yourself more than you help yourself. So we want to loop through the array. One trick when you're removing things, it's a good habit to actually loop backwards. The reason being, if you loop forwards, that only works as long as you're removing one item. If you're removing multiple items, it doesn't end up working, and you have to do quite a bit more additional work for that. So I'm going to actually loop backwards. And that's, because I need to loop backwards, that's one of the reasons I'm not going to try and take a shortcut. Okay? Because any shortcut I take is going to result in me looping forwards. Is everybody with me there? So we're going to start with the I being the length minus 1. We're going to go as long as it's I or greater and decrement at every step. Does that make sense? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Okay. So once, again, we kind of need to find it. So we're going to go through each of the items and say, I want to find it, item.get I. Okay, so if I found it there, then I'm going to say let's items.remove. I'm going to say remove with the index. So remove I. So that means also if there is a case that we get into where potentially the same product gets added to the list twice, it's going to remove both instances of that product. Now, also in there, I need to figure out, actually, I probably do want to do the same trick. When I think about it, I probably do want to do the same trick that I had done previously and save the item. I do need to update the subtotal again, right? So if I think about how that's going to change, it's basically the reverse. So if I'm removing that quantity effectively, so here it's going to be minus equals. So subtotal minus equals the quantity times the price. And so same way as I kind of did there, I might say, well, here is the change in the subtotal is the price times the quantity minus equals that, and then the tax amount goes down as well by change in subtotal times tax percent. And then finally the total is subtotal plus tax amount. Questions?
Yeah, I'm still typing here just for a second.
Yeah, that's fine. There's a good amount that went into there.
Wouldn't you want to remove the item after you do at least some of that math?
What do you mean?
Well, if you remove the item,
Mm-hmm.
well, no, I guess it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't matter here.
Mm-hmm. What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking the item wouldn't exist anymore, but I guess since we've created an item, it would still exist.
Yeah, I'm not garbage collecting the item. Like, removing it from the list does not cause it to be garbage collected immediately. I saved it to a variable here, which is why I have access to it later. So even though it's not on the list, I still have access to it.
And Mr. Smith, any reason why, say, like on line 49, you just couldn't make where it says change in subtotal? Wouldn't it just be tax amount minus equals subtotal times tax percent? Is there a reason you use change subtotal instead of your newly derived subtotal on line 48?
That would be... Yeah, I guess you could do that. That could work.
Does it really matter, in terms of like good coding?
If I were to say that, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And no, there's actually, yeah, no, that's fine. I could totally do that, which means I could refactor this out because the tax amount just can be that in all cases. Is total times tax percent. You're right. Yeah, I might as well just update it that way. I don't need to do any sort of up or down.
And would we need a break after line 50?
No, because I'm allowing for the case of, well, maybe the product is on the, I'm considering the case where the product is maybe in your cart twice. So it might get removed twice. Does that follow?
It's kind of like a fail-safe, or
It's a fail-safe. Yeah. It's a fail-safe. Ideally, I don't want that to happen, right? Ideally, I don't want the cart to be added as the same product to be added to multiple cart items. But I'm putting that in a fail-safe just in case it does. Which is not too costly, because if you think about how big your average cart is, even like 100 items in your cart is pretty unusual. So it shouldn't be a very long array to loop through, and so breaking doesn't really save that much time here. Okay.
all right.
And then in terms of the tax amount is pretty in terms of changing the tax percent, that one's pretty easy, because we just have to update the tax amount to be subtotal times the percent, or I could use the tax percent, and then this dot total again becomes subtotal plus tax amount. And I probably honestly don't need the word this in all three of these cases, because I'm naming the percent something else.
I'm not understanding what that's doing. I mean, why? What does setting the tax percent have anything to do with the subtotal?
So if I change the tax percent, that changes how much tax I have to pay, right? If I go from, say, 5% tax to 10% tax, I have to pay twice as much tax.
Okay, I get it. It should it's prompting a recalculation.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
If the tax percentage changes, then the tax amount and the total have to change with it.
And you got rid of the this word. Does that change anything?
It doesn't change anything, because I haven't called this argument. I didn't call it tax percent. If I call it tax percent, then I would need the keyword this. Cool. So there's a decent amount of code in those, right? And so that would commonly be something, and actually I can, now that I've changed what I changed, I can actually undo needing that change in subtotal variable. This is definitely something where you might want to, throw some unit tests around that to make sure it works, right? This is kind of one of those classes where you're like, okay, I have some logic here. I need to check that these different methods work and that they work as I would expect them to. Because it's not easy to... Huh?
Where was that float at that you got rid of?
There was a change in subtotal number in both of these that I eliminated in update item and remove item.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just saying the subtotal plus equals and the subtotal minus equals that calculation now. Any questions on here, or anybody still typing before I go to the next thing?
I'm caught up.
Okay. All right. So next question. So we've got our two model classes. We've got the cart. We've got the cart item. And to kind of backtrack on where we're going here, our goal was to add these two screens, right? So we've dealt with the model part of those two screens, of what we need for that. So the next question is to go to maybe product detail and start building that out. And so in terms of product detail, I'm maybe going to go to the layout first and kind of put that together. So let's see. Show system UI, set the default margin to 8. And so then I want to drag in some controls to kind of be able to see that data. So for instance, I need an image view, which is going to be the product image. I want maybe a text view for the name of the product, the description of the product, and maybe the price of the product. I also want an FAB to be able then to go purchase it. So buttons, floating action bar here, and I'm going to use the IC buy icon. Okay. So I've dragged those in. I might go ahead and give those IDs. So this would be the product detail image. Yes. Product detail name. The product detail description. And the product detail price. Okay. All those IDs have been getting. I'm going to anchor it where I want it. So I'm going to anchor that there. I'm going to anchor the buy button. Oh, maybe I'll anchor it on the bottom left corner instead. Bottom right. There we go. So, oh, and I also need to give that one. Product detail FAB. Yep. Okay. So this I want to anchor underneath the image and to the left side there. The price I'm going to anchor to the right side and under there. And the description I'm going to anchor underneath the name to the right edge of the screen and to the left edge of the screen as well, right and left. And okay, so 8 margin on the top, and I want this to be match constraints. But I do want an 8 DP margin on all 3 sides. So I've got those constraints in. Next question is going to be, oh, well, maybe I'll constrain the name to the right side of the price and give that a width of match constraint. Yeah, that looks better. So I want to put some text in there as kind of placeholder text. I'm going to move that out of the first text field and into the designer field. So this would be product name. I don't need to worry about extracting that string this way because I'm not actually going to use it. And the final view. Let me go down to the Nexus S, so I'm looking at it that way. Now the product name, I think I might want to bold, kind of like we did on the other screen. And I think I want to change the text color of the price to be teal. Or was that the one I want? No, this is not the color. Oh, no. Yeah, teal 200. That's the number I want.
If we're going to be doing a recycler view here,
Yep.
doesn't this stuff get deleted later?
This is not a recycler view.
Yeah, I know that, but I thought that in the end. Okay, all right.
Right. This is a product detail page. So the product detail page is just going to show a single item.
Oh, okay. You could use one, but it wouldn't add any value. A recycler view.
No, you shouldn't use one.
Oh, okay. I just figured it would be a waste, just extra work. All right,
Yeah,
never mind.
You shouldn't use one. You should only use a recycler view when you're going to show multiple things. So here we're only showing one thing. So
Okay.
that's my product detail screen. Now I'm going to give people a few minutes to get caught up. Okay, cool. All right. Sounds like people are getting faster at that, which is a good sign. Good sign, because we're in, making these screens is a pretty common thing. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a quick layout for the cart items. So in here I'm going to say new layout resource file, and this is going to be item cart item. Or this could be just item cart. That would be fine. Item cart. And I'm going to turn off the system UI real quick there. Resize it with the handlebar a little bit. And so what I want with this one is going to be very similar to what we had here, right? So I could potentially bring, let me just start with that. Well, although we did our design and it came out different, so maybe I'll just start from a clean point there. So in here I want an image, and I want, what else? We want the drop down. Containers, spinner. I want to change that to wrap content by wrap content, so it's smaller. I want some text, which is going to be the name of the item. I want some more text, which is going to be the price. And finally, I want a little button, which is just going to be an image button down here to delete the item. Now, when I drag that in there, I notice that I don't have a trash icon yet, so maybe I should go add that. So over on drawable, I'm going to right-click drawable, say new vector asset. I'm going to go find the trash can. Nope, that's not the one I want. There we go. It's called delete. And so I see delete. Next, finish. And so the image button here is going to have that I see delete on it. So I'm going to anchor that to the bottom and the right. I'm going to anchor the image view to the top, the left, and the bottom. I'm going to anchor my spinner to the left side of this, the top and the bottom. The name is going to be similarly anchored to the top and the bottom. And the price is going to be anchored here on the left, on the right, top, bottom. Although maybe, nope, I still want it to be centered. So that's going to go through and not be attached to the button. Okay. So let me give these IDs. So this is item cart image, item cart quantity, and basically I'm just using the name of the layout as the prefix. So item cart name, item cart price, and item cart delete. Okay, so that's all been changed there. I do want to set some values. So here I want to use, again, the designer. So this would be product price or product name. This is the price. And then finally kind of going through these, I want to have this be blue like we did everywhere else. I'm going to have the price, the name be bold. And I want the spinner, I want to point that to some entries that I can, have be in there. Now, I don't have those entries yet, so I need to maybe come back to that. Trying to just think if there's anything else we need to do. I think product price, I might want to anchor, product name, I might anchor over here and have that be match constraint. Yeah, and then finally, I just want to change the constraint layout as a whole. You remember that I needed to change the height of that last time. So I'm going to go with at demand item height for the height of the individual item.
What did you change right before the constraint layout?
I changed the height of the constraint layout to demand item height. Just like we did with the products last time on Friday. And then pause here a minute for people to get caught up.
Do any of those items have 4 constraints?
No.
Okay, I think I got it.
So the image has 3 constraints. The price on the end has 3 constraints as well. Oh,
Product name does.
product name does have 4 constraints. Yes, product name does have 4 constraints. Yeah. Okay, who are we still waiting? Who is not done? I see one person missing. Okay, cool. All right, so I still need to set up the drop down to actually have the entries that are going to appear there. So I'm going to go over to strings.xml. And you'll remember that previously we created an array for, say, contact types, where we have personal, work, other. So we're going to create another array here, which is going to be for the quantities. And so this is going to be item 1. And then I'm going to just duplicate that up until I can go to 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. So I'm going to create that string array. This is in strings.xml. And then I'm just going to go back to the layout and tell it to use that array for the spinner. So clicking on the spinner, I'm going to tell it that the entries come from quantities.
Cool.
Is there a way to get a well, I guess it doesn't matter because it'll be pre-populated if we go to that page, so never mind.
What will be pre-populated?
Well, if we're going to the card items, there'll be at least one there. I was going to say what your default one would be, but it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It'll be set when it's brought over.
Yeah. When we will, in the recycler view, we'll take care of populating that number. Okay, so I've got 2 layouts there for, the items that are going to be in the cart. I've got a layout for the detail page. And finally, I just need a quick layout for the cart itself. So in terms of activity cart, show system UI again, I want a recycler view, which is going to take up most of the screen. So I can anchor that to those 3 edges. But remember, on the bottom, I'm going to reserve some space for the totals as well as that place order button. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit and maybe just set this to set the margins to 0 and set the height to maybe 300 dp at least for the moment, so that I have some space on the bottom. So I'm going to set the height to that. Underneath, so I need the subtotal, the tax, and the total. So 3 text views there. And I'm going to add a single button, which is going to be for the place order button. So the text of that button will be place order. Move that over. I can put some placeholder text in here. This is the tax. This is, or no, that one is this. that one is the subtotal. This one is the tax. So subtotal. And this one is total. Okay, so I just need to anchor everything correctly then. So subtotal, maybe I start from the bottom, go total, bottom right, tax there, right above the total, subtotal, right above the tax. Okay, so those are anchored. I'm going to anchor the place to the right and maybe anchor the right edge of that to subtotal. So it'll be a little bit offset, but that's okay. Or do I want it to be centered? No, I'll go ahead and leave it offset like that.
Mr. Smith, why didn't you?
Yep.
Why didn't you reorder it and put like place order to the right and subtotal everything to the left? Because I feel like that would look better. Because you see what I mean? Because then it's on the right side of the screen. A lot of buttons aren't usually on the left side of the screen. It looks like a cancel button.
I guess I could do that. I could move all those around. I just need to remove all the constraints on those. So clear constraints on selection, clear constraints. Yeah, that would make sense too. I could put this over here. Boop, boop. Those are fixed. I need to fix this to an 8. And I need to fix that down here, there.
Place order to total, couldn't you? Oh no, I stayed in the same spot. Never mind. That doesn't matter.
Well, it's a good question, because if I think about where I'm going to anchor it to, right now the word subtotal is longer, but the total is also going to usually be a bigger number. So which one of those two ends up being longer, I don't really know. With me?
Yeah.
So, I mean, my other option is to just say I'll just anchor it all the way over to the left edge, and then we'll kind of figure it out. The other way I can do this, let me actually show you a little special thing.
Could you just do a baseline, maybe to tax or to total?
So one thing I could do, and probably the easiest one to do, would be to just anchor it to the bottom right corner. That would be definitely the easiest one to do.
It looks better.
Huh?
It looks better too.
Yeah, I think that might be the way. I could potentially add in here, there's another sort of kind of thing that we haven't talked about. So specifically, I could add in what we call a vertical barrier. So a vertical barrier is a line that appears, and it'll be kind of it gives you a line that you can anchor things to. And the trick is that you can base it on the width of things. So I've got the barrier here. You can kind of see it if I click it in the hierarchy, but it doesn't otherwise appear. If I took the 3 text views and put them inside of the barrier, why do I have a null there? I don't know. But on the barrier, then the next thing to do is I got to kind of change the behavior of the barrier. So the barrier is left. I want it to be right. And so this barrier kind of is at the edge or the widest thing. Do you see that?
How did you get the barrier?
I right-clicked. I went to Helpers, and I said Add Horizontal Barrier.
Do you want us to add the barrier?
Not Add Vertical Barrier. You don't need to add that. I'm going to go ahead and just leave it on the right edge, but that's just showing you that you could. And so the way I would do that is then I just anchor to that barrier, which is there. Why won't it let me?
And that barrier is always going to expand.
Yeah, so that barrier will be fixed to the height, the width of the widest thing.
Yeah.
So that's how you can get around cases like this, because you do sometimes need things like that. Sometimes you need things to behave in such a way. but not necessarily for this purpose. Okay.
Is your text view 3 supposed to be total, or is it?
I don't know
it's
right
a hard
now. I need to go and change the IDs. So this should be activity should be cart subtotal. This is cart tax. And cart total. The recycler view would be cart items. And place order would be the cart place order. So cool. I've got that there. And lastly, I need to go ahead and set the bottom constraint on the recycler view and get it back to match constraint in both directions.
What did you do to the barrier to move it out like that?
I changed the barrier direction from left to right. So it's on the right edges of the controls that are inside of it.
And that's sort of like a tab stop, if you will, like so that things line up nice.
Yeah. So if I wanted to line something up to the right edge of that now, of those three, then I could.
Okay, because subtotal happens to be the limiting factor, but it could be something else later if we put a longer word in there.
Yeah, it could be this. It could be the subtotal. It could be the total. It's probably going to be one of those two. Yeah, and language matters too, because maybe if the word tax is much longer, well then tax would be the long one. So I don't know which one necessarily that is always, like, you can't predict which one is always going to be the longest. Okay. Anybody still going on this? Again, you don't really have to add the barrier. I'm just showing you, hey, here's an option, and this is where you might use it. Okay. So that's good in terms of our layouts. I think those are all of the layouts we needed to create. I don't think we have any left. I do have the one word place order to extract from here. Also looks on total that I don't have it in the right spot. There we go. I'm not going to extract those three strings, the subtotal, the tax, and the total, for the reason that I'm going to end up with I'm going to extract them later, if that makes any sense, because I want to actually have the numbers in there. So those I'm just using for the designer. So place order, I'm going to go to the code. I'm going to extract that string, Alt Enter, and so that string is going to be place order button. Okay, so I'm ready to actually start writing, going back to the code and actually fleshing those things out. So in terms of returning, I'm going to go close everything I have open. And let's see. So I want to do probably the product detail activity next. So in terms of the product detail, we put the layout together. This one should be pretty simple. I just need to display all the relevant data. So looking at the layout, I've got a few controls there. Okay, so private image view, and maybe I'll do this split screen. Split vertically, close that. And maybe close my palette, close my component tree, close my attributes. There we go. So image view, I've got the image. Maybe I'll just call that one image view. Private. Text view. This is maybe my name view. Private text view. My description view. Private text view. Price view. And then I've got my FAB, so private floating action button, FAB. Okay, so I need to just link all those things up. So image view is equal to find view by ID r.id dot item product image. My name view is equal to find view by ID r.id dot item product name, and my description view is find view by ID r dot ID dot item product description, and the price and finally the FAB. What was the ID of that item? Component tree, item product, item detail, FAB. Which means that I have the wrong ID for several of these. Item detail.
I think it's.
Isn't it product detail, Fab?
Yeah, that's what I'm missing. And so these should all be product detail, not item product. What were you saying, Corey?
No, I was saying the same thing.
Yeah, I've got the wrong IDs. That's easy to mess up at this point. Yeah, I started those all with product detail, so they should all be product detail. Okay, so I've got my items linked, and the next thing I need to do is actually populate them with data, right? So if I'm thinking about how I'm going to get the data to this screen, what are my options, at least as far as what we've discussed so far?
How do we get the data?
Yeah, how do we get the data?
Well, we've used intents to this point.
Okay. So I could use intents. And so in reality, I'll need to, I will definitely need to pull some data from the intent. There's a few different ways to go about that, though. So if I think about my intent, I could say get intent, and things I could get from there, well, maybe I say intent get string extra, and so maybe I could get the name and go through each of those things one by one, right? Get the name, the description, the price. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah, we want to get an object, right? Isn't that what you said at the beginning? How we're
Yeah,
gonna do
so
it?
one of the things I want to show you is how to actually get an object to go through there. So what I'm actually going to write here is I'm going to say product is equal to intent dot get, and here's the kind of trick in the preface of where we're going. So I'm going to say get serializable extra. The name of that will be product. And you'll notice here in red, it kind of says, well, you can't do that, right? It says I can't do this because my product is not serializable. So in Java at large, this is not a Android specific thing. You can mark your classes as what's called serializable. Serialization is the process of taking your objects and turning them basically into an array of bytes. It's what we use to potentially save that, often originally used for saving your objects to disk, for instance. If you wanted to save them to a file, you would serialize them. Or if you wanted to send them over the network, you could serialize them. So the fact that it's serializable says it can be serialized. Okay. Any questions on that? So serializable basically means it can be saved. Not everything can be marked as serializable. Only some things. So as long as your model class, let's say the only thing it contains are strings and other primitive types, you're fine. That can be serialized. Where you get into trouble is where you have objects in there. Those may or may not be serializable. So for instance, if we had drawable in there, drawable is not serializable, so I wouldn't be able to serialize this class. So everything in every field you have has to be one of two things. It has to be either a primitive type or it has to be serializable. String is already serializable, which is why we don't need to do anything with it. So here all I need to do is say implements serializable, because I've already set it up that way. So with that kind of in mind going forward. So in product, you're going to mark that as implements serializable. Everybody with me there? And so you can see that comes from java.io.serializable. Everything that deals with, for instance, working with files or other I/O is in that Java I/O package. Okay.
Would it still work if we were getting our images in another way, like from a URL should work.
URL would work. Resource ID works. What doesn't work is if it's in a drawable.
Drawable. Okay.
Yeah, this is the one that causes problems. But these other two are fine. So that's what I'm going to change it to, and it should be now happy. Get serializable extra. Let's see. And can I tell it what type, or do I just have to cast it? I think I just have to cast it. So I think in here I just have to cast this return. to product. There we go. So I say get serializable extra product. And so I'm kind of assuming here that it's being passed to me as a product, right? Which actually isn't true in the current code base. But that's what I want to change it into. Okay. So once I've got the product, I can actually start filling in the values. So image view dot set image resource is product dot get image res ID. The name view dot set text is product dot get name. Description view set text. This is going to be product dot get description. Similar with the price. Now you'll remember one of the things we had to do with the price is we needed to format as currency. So number format, currency format is equal to number format dot get currency instance. And I'm going to say I want this to be in US dollars, so I'm going to use locale US. And I need to spell that correctly. Currency format. And so when I set the price, I'm going to say price view dot set text. And so here we're going to use the currency format dot format. And then I'm going to use the product dot get price. So most of this we've seen already. The new line is going to be the one here where we're using that serializable extra. Anybody still typing?
I'm caught up.
Okay. All right. So next thing, I want to actually backtrack a little bit. And so we need to actually send the product as an object that way, as a serializable thing. So the place where that's being sent, I'm going to go back to the product list adapter. And you'll remember in product list adapter, we have this on click listener. So I'm going to remove the toast. And I want to build up the intent. Now, this previously was going to order activity. I'm going to point it at product detail and activity instead. And we're going to pass this as product, and I'm just going to pass the item. So I'm going to say put extra product, pass the item in. That's the difference here. So here I'm now passing an object instead of just passing individual like primitive pieces of data. So one way to do that is using the serializable interface. Another way to do that is using something called a parcelable. And that's better for cases where you have things like drawable and such that you need to pass through. That you need to do some conversion backwards and forwards with. So if I click on an item now, I should be going to the detail screen like this. Does everybody have that? Click on item, you get the detail screen.
My app is starting up now.
Okay.
Yeah, mine works.
Does anybody notice a bug? Because there's definitely a bug here.
What's the bug?
That's what I'm asking you. Remember we talked about breadcrumb trails earlier.
There's no back button.
So, well, there is a back button. I can use the
There's
back
no-
button here, but there's
The other
no
one.
up navigation, right? No ancestral navigation, right? So, what do I need to change in order to get the up navigation back? Where do I need to go? It's very quiet in here.
I'm still messing with my thing. It keeps crashing for some reason.
Oh. What's the error message? You can post it in chat. Maybe I have an answer if you can have the error message handy.
Yeah, I can try and find it here.
So remember, up navigation is configured in the manifest file. So where we need to go is up to the Android manifest, and I need to tell it what the parent activity is. So in the product detail activity, which is here, I need to set a few things. You'll also notice it says Droid Cafe. I probably don't want it to say Droid Cafe. I want it to actually say maybe the name of the product. So in here, I'm going to say Android parent activity name. Point that to the main activity as the parent. And I want to say the label is product detail. And extract that. Extract string resource. Activity, product, detail. So definitely pay attention to the app bar. Now, what if I want to change this to be the name of the product? Have we covered a way to do that yet?
No.
I don't think we have. I think if I go back to the product detail activity, I'll obviously need to have the product in order to do that. But if I look at my setters, I think that might be the one I want. Let's see if this works. Product dot get name. Nope, that's not it. Why did it crash? It says window null does not exist. So I can't just call get action bar. Great. Okay. And it's not get toolbar. And can I call get window? Let's see if that one works. Nope, that is not the one. So I think it's this.
Can you set the label rather than the title?
Well, the
Because if you change the label in the manifest, wouldn't it make sense to change the label in the code?
I would think so too, but I think it's actually I don't think it's called that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is called set title.
All right.
And so I believe that is the correct code. What it's telling me though is when I try to set it, it's saying, well, there is no action bar for you to set. And I think that's basically because at this point, the action bar hasn't been created. And so I think if I look, get action bar, and okay, got it. Get support action bar. That seems to be the problem.
Did you want me to throw that error up in chat here?
Yes, if you would. Let's see if that works. Yes, so that's the catch. So because we're using app compat activity, which is kind of doing some compatibility, because the action bar didn't originally exist in earlier versions of Android, that's where we've got get support activity instead.
I don't know if I was having the same problem, but I got a no reference error on the image. Would have been set on line 39 in your code there.
So line 39 on this?
Yeah.
My guess is that you haven't made the change to the adapter that's the adapter. So the adapter is still sending the intent and not the product object. So make sure that the on-click listener is sending the correct intent.
Okay. Item view.
And I think you have the same problem.
It's
Zach.
product ID. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're sent. I think Zach, you have the same problem where.
Well, I have mine set up as exactly as the same as yours right now.
Okay, you're sending the product.
Yeah.
Okay, and did you verify that you're receiving it as the key product? So it should be product on both sides.
But I'm receiving it as an uppercase P.
Oh, that would be your problem.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's case sensitive. So that indicates me it's
comments like that can be case sensitive and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got that. That's all I needed to change to get the title up there. So we've got the correct thing up in the action bar. We've got our up arrow. We've got the actual product name, which is what we usually want to have there. And then I want to be able to, add to cart, right? So I can click this button and I can add it to the cart. All right. So if we think about that, I could either hook that up in code as an on-click listener, or I could hook it up in the XML resource. Which of those two should I do? Answer is either one's fine. So give me a preference.
Well, if I was doing it, I'd go to the XML and just type the click in there.
Okay, so let's do it through the XML. So activity product detail. I'm going to go to the code here, and on the FAB, we're going to say Android on click. This is going to be on add to cart. So product detail activity on add to cart. And so in there, I just need to send basically an intent to the cart activity. So let's say here that I'm going to go maybe make a new intent. And that be this, comma, the cart activity dot class. Okay, so we've got that. What data do I need to send to the cart activity if I want to add it to the cart? Probably the product. Right? Probably the product. So let's say I want to send the product, and maybe we'll send it as quantity 1, because right now we don't have any way to specify, what the quantity should be. Now, I asked for the product here in the onCreate method, but I didn't really save it, so I don't have direct access to it. I could get it again from the intent, but I'm going to add a variable so I can have that product later. So private product, and so this is going to go from being just a local variable to being an instance variable, and that way I'll have it down here. So intent dot put extra, and I could put that as product, and maybe intent dot put extra. This would be the quantity, and so I'm going to give it a quantity of 1. And then finally start activity. Intent. So that gives me at least a starting point into this shopping cart. Any questions on that right now?
Nope.
Okay. So let's go into the shopping cart. All right. So if I look here, I still need to do a few things with this activity. And maybe I'll start with the app bar, because we had just done that for the other activity. So in here, I want to go to, there is the cart activity. So I want to set the parent as well as the label. And so my parent again is going to be main activity. And my label let's say shopping cart. Alt enter to extract that. Activity cart. So click in there, click buy, and now I'm on the shopping cart. If I hit up, that should take me all the way back to Droid Cafe, all the way back to the main activity.
What did you put as the label for that?
Shopping cart.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So I need a few things. I know that I have a recycler view here, right? So in terms of creating that recycler view, remember that you need a layout for the items, which we've done. And you need to add the recycler view to the actual activity layout. We've done those two things. But I haven't made a adapter or a view holder. Okay. So I'm going to do those real quick. And you can kind of follow along. So I'm going to say new Java class cart view holder. Or cart item view holder is probably more correct. Factor rename cart item view holder. And so that needs to extend recycler view dot view holder. I'll enter, create constructor, Mac super, yes. And so in here we need a reference to the things we have on our layout. So on our layout, just item cart, stick this on the split vertically. I lost my class. Cart item view holder, close others. Okay, so I just have those two things up next to each other. Okay, so in the cart view holder, I need an image, private image view. Image view, private spinner, quantity, this is private text view, name view, and private text view, price view, private image button. This is the delete button. Okay, so that's what I need in my view holder. Pretty generic, as you remember, anytime you're creating these view holders. as we talked about on Friday. Basically, you're just creating a place to store all the individual views from your layout. So that's all we need there. Oh, actually, I was going to make those public, so I don't need to write getters and setters.
Mr. Smith, how do you change them so fast like that?
I changed one, and then I just do Control C and Control V. I copy paste. That's really all I did. Okay. Any questions on the view holder? Okay. Take that as a no. And so remember, we need to create an adapter as well. So new Java class. This is going to be the cart adapter. And so in here, this extends the recycler view dot adapter. And so we're going to link that to our view holder, which should be cart item view holder. And so those are linked up. And then I just need to start implementing it. So private, we're going to link to a cart in this case, because our cart has all the items. So cart, public, constructor, public cart adapter. And if I look back at this adapter here, I know I need the context and the inflator as well. And so this needs to take a context and a cart. And so this dot cart is equal to cart. This dot context is equal to context. This dot inflator is equal to new, or is it, what was it, layout inflator? Yeah, layout inflator from. That's what I want. So layout inflator from context. So that's my constructor. And the next one would be to override get item count. So get item count. We're going to say if there is a cart, then we're going to return the size of the cart. So if cart does not equal null, then it's cart dot get items dot size. Otherwise it's 0. And on create view holder is the next one to implement. And so in here, I'll remove that return null. So view item view is equal to inflator dot inflate. And so I'm going to inflate that from the cart item layout, which I think I just called that item cart. Yeah, item cart and false. So inflate the layout. And what am I missing there? Oh, I need to pass in the parent as the second argument. So the layout, the parent, and then false. And then I can start to build up the view holder. So cart item view holder VH is equal to new cart item view holder. Pass in the item view to the constructor, and then grab the individual fields. So vh.imageView is equal to item view dot find view by ID r dot ID dot item cart image, and so I'll just go down with each of those fields. So item cart image, the quantity, find view by ID r dot ID dot item cart quantity. And so vh dot name view is equal to item view dot find view by ID r dot ID dot item cart name. Yep, item cart name. That's the one I want. vh dot price view r dot ID item cart price. And finally the delete button. So vh dot delete button is equal to item view dot find view by ID r dot ID dot item cart delete. And then finally, we need to remember to return VH. So remember, this is to create the empty view holders, which will then be used later on to actually put data into. And remember, the place that we actually put the data in is on bind view holder. Make sure I have the right one. Yep. So the first thing I want to do is grab the particular item. So final cart item is equal to cart dot get items dot get position. So in this case, remember, my cart is not just a list. It's actually an object which has that list of items inside of it, which is why I'm calling dot get items and then dot get on the list. I want to then start filling in the data. So in here, maybe I'm going to change this to VH, just to keep it short. VH dot image view dot set image resource. This would be from the item dot get thumbnail res ID VH dot quantity view dot set. Now remember, the quantity is a drop down or a spinner, so I need to say set selected. Set. Tell it what item is selected. Now, what it has, there's not a way to immediately just set that, so I'm going to come back to that. So vh.nameView.set set text, and so the name is pretty easy. Item.get product name. vh.priceview.set text, And again, remember I need a currency formatter for this. So I'm going to borrow that same code that we've got elsewhere. Doop, doop, doop. And so back to the card adapter. Currency format. Price view is currency format dot format. And I'm going to take that as item dot get product price. Now you'll remember that one of the things that we wanted to do here is actually multiply the quantity and the price. So I might say here float price is equal to item get product price times item get quantity. So it's going to have both of those things in there. And so the last things to hook up are the spinner for the quantity, as well as the delete button. So in here, one of the things I need to do in order to know which item selected, I actually do have to loop through potentially the array. Although, actually, I know that the first one is 1. So from that, I can actually figure out what the position is. So vh.quantityView set selection. And so the index actually would be item get quantity minus 1. And I'm going to tell it not to animate. So because I know the quantity, the first option in the list is 1, then the one that's selected would be take the quantity, subtract 1. So for the button, vh.delete button dot set on click listener. And so what I would say is new on click listener. Here, when you click on it, I want it to get deleted. But for now, I'm just going to show a toast. Toast.makeText context delete.
Mr. Smith?
Yep.
Can you show your card item view holder for a second?
Yep. It's actually in the chat. Just look in Discord.
Alright, that's what I thought. I have my field set to private and nothing's matching up because of it.
Yeah, I had forgot about that and initially created them as private. It's like, oh, I need to switch those over to public.
Wait, what needs to change to public?
In the view holder, you just want to change all those fields to public. Pause here a moment. Give people a chance to finish up the adapter.
having some trouble with line 63, typing that out where it will fill in. There will be something that'll pop up, but I'm not able to enact it. How would that be done again?
So I typed in the word new first, new space, and then I start typing on click listener and hit enter when the suggestion pops up.
That was the very first thing you typed. You didn't type VH, you just typed new view dot on click listener.
Oh, no, I did have to type this part. VH delete button said on click listener. I had to type that all out.
Okay.
But then once you get inside the parentheses, that's where it can start to suggest things.
Okay, it worked.
Yeah. So just waiting for everybody to catch up. Any other issues that people are having at this point? Do people feel like they're maybe remembering more about this card adapter from Friday? Or sorry, the recycler view?
Kinda, yeah.
Doing it again?
Yeah, there's a lot of information being passed back and forth.
Yeah.
Like within like the past two methods, it's called a lot of information.
Yeah. It's a lot of lines of code. But you can kind of see there's a recipe or a pattern to it. So once you've got that recipe kind of memorized, then you can just basically write it from memory.
Are we supposed to be able to see anything in the cart yet? No.
Not yet, because A, first of all, we haven't actually added an item to the cart, and B, we haven't actually hooked up the adapter. Like, we just created the adapter, but we haven't actually hooked it up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got my text view showing up in the shopping cart. Oh, I didn't change. Okay, I know why. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like we're not going to get this done today.
Yeah, we're close-ish. I kind of knew that taking the shopping cart might be some time, unfortunately, but this is why I went ahead and just pushed the labs back a day. I mean, my feeling on doing this, I feel that I think the time that we spend on this example is worth it. So if that means that some other things push back further, that's fine. Because all the stuff we've been talking about today is kind of really core stuff that applies to any program you build. And so I think I definitely want to have you guys have a strong foundation on the fundamentals here. So if that pushes our schedule back a little bit, we'll just flex the schedule. But I think this is worth spending some extra days on rather than just one day. Here's the recycler view. Yeah. You can recognize that part of the code we set up with the whole cart class, we haven't really hooked up any of that yet. And so some of that's just cart related. But we needed to have that in place to be able to actually look at, like, well, what happens if you want to modify the data? change quantities, add things, remove things, etc. Is anybody still coding on the card adapter? Let me just see what do we have here? Mobile. Okay. Sheridan, are you still there? Vincent? Okay. So I assume at this point, Sheridan, you probably need to go off to work as usual. I'll have the video posted of this later today, so you can watch that last bit. Okay. That's fine. So I think the one part that I want to do today before we call it quits is to just get the shopping cart to show the item that we just added to the cart. And so there's some more work that we need to do with keeping the state of the cart as well as being able to modify that cart. And so I think we'll just have to, try to do that tomorrow. If that again moves the labs back a day, then I say we move it back a day. So is that good with everybody?
I would rather have it spread out than a huge jumble at one time. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I can't spread it out much further, too much further, because otherwise we're pushing things back a whole week, if that makes sense. So I can push things back a few days, but it becomes a lot harder if we push things back, say, a week or two, because that means we're losing.
I'm more on the edge of
losing
not
content.
rushing any coding. Like, just if we have to do a little bit of it tomorrow, do a little bit of it tomorrow versus rush it today.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Because there's no way we're going to finish it today.
Yeah.
There's no way. So let's go to the card activity real quick. And so what I'm going to do is, again, so that first part of it of just getting something to appear into the cart. So I need to get the recycler view. So private recycler view. This is the items. I'm going to call that the items view. Private text view is going to be the subtotal view. And so I'm going to add a text view, each of those three. Subtotal, tax, and total. So those are my controls there. And if I need the button, which I may, then I'm going to add that here. Button, order button. Or maybe that's maybe call that the place order button. Okay, place order button. And so here, I just need to find each of those pieces. So items view is equal to find view by ID, r.id dot cart items, and the subtotal view ID dot subtotal, the tax, the total, and okay, so that's, oh, and finally the button. So place order button is find view by ID r.id dot cart place order. There we go. Okay, so I have all the controls I need, and now we get into the actual recycler view code. So items view dot set layout manager, and I want to give that a new linear layout manager. This, and I think that's all. I think I can just take the default for everything else. So items view dot set adapter, and here I'm going to say new cart adapter. And so remember, the cart adapter needs a context plus the actual cart. So I do need to add a variable here for the cart. So private cart, and so I want to construct a new cart here. So cart is equal to new cart. And actually, I'll need that adapter in a minute too. So private cart adapter. So the adapter is equal to new cart adapter, this cart, and then just pass the adapter to set adapter. Okay. I need to get the specific info. I need to get the item to be added to the cart from the intent. So in here, I might say intent. What order of sequence do I need to do? Actually, I want to move that. I don't want to do that yet. I want to do that first. So this is a new intent. So I don't want to create the adapter, and I want to wait to create the adapter until after I have the item in there. So intent. Oh, no, this needs to be get intent. I don't want to create new intent. I want to get the intent that was passed here. And so product is equal to intent dot get serializable extra. We had passed in the product, and so here product, and I need the quantity as well. Oh, no second argument there. Okay, so get the product and get the quantity. Intent get and so I could default the quantity as 0. And so what I'm going to say, if we do have a product, because it could be, remember there's more than one way to get to this cart activity, or at least there will be. if I go through directly from the main activity to the cart, I won't be adding one. So I may or may not have a product and a quantity to work with. And so I only want to grab those if they're present. I want to add one if those things are present. So if there is a product, then I'm going to say cart dot add item, new cart item, and that's where I'm going to use that constructor that we had created beginning of this that takes a product and a quantity. So if all of that is in place, then I should be able to see an item in my cart. Yay. And so that's where we'll leave it for today and pick up with the rest tomorrow. I do want to remind everyone that tomorrow is an in-person day. So we'll be on campus tomorrow. Looking at, let me pull up the calendar and just check that I'm saying the right thing. So the plan for this week is that we'll be on campus Tuesday, Wednesday. At least I'll be on campus Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So. Any questions on this last bit?
No, just got to go through it. It's tough in class. I'm just kind of like typing it out, and I'm sort of getting it, but not really. If you would have typed something totally wrong, it would have went over my head. Well, it's always like that.
Yeah. I just thought, again, looking at what we did on Friday, it's like, okay, wait, there's some things in terms of, turning that into a fleshed out program that you kind of need to think about. Which we've talked about some of those pieces. It's just that, where do those pieces connect?
All right. Well, cool. We'll just push this code up, and then guess we're done for today, right?
That'll be your 10s for today. That's fine. And tomorrow we'll finish this up. I think we're most of the way there. I mean, really, the only things left are to hook up the rest of this shopping cart screen and to point the main activity to this screen. I think that's all that's left.
Yeah. Yes. Pretty heavy stuff.
So, all right. So I will catch up. I will see you in class tomorrow. Well, again, I'll be on campus. So.
All right. See y'all tomorrow.
Yeah.
See ya.